Welcome everyone, Tactical Lich here, and today we have an interesting tournament battle to showcase, this time between Sipa and Sigils on one of the Friday night tournaments. Now for the army build here, Sipa going for a Bretonnian army, going for quite an interesting build with 3 field trebuchets on the Bretonnian side, and on top of that they are all upgraded to level 7, adding extra accuracy with their chevrons. Now, that is a lot of investment into the Bretonnian artillery, and let's see if that's gonna actually work against the Vampire Coast, which is also an artillery faction. For the rest of the army, a ton of peasants, peasant mobs in the front line mixed in with peasant spearmen at arms. At the back there, 5 units of peasant bows actually. Some of them with pox arrows, some of them with fire arrows. For the signature mobility of Bretonnia, we have a Grail Knight and a Royal Hippogriff Knight, supported by a Fay Enchantress coming in with Earthblood, Regrowth, the Chalice of Potions, as well as the Lady's Mist, the Mist of the Lady. On the other side of the battlefield there, the Vampire Coast going for a quite standard army, mixture of infantry and artillery, a front line of zombie pirate deckhand mobs, supported by a line of pistol mobs and handgun mobs. A mixture of artillery and small arms fire. Further back, 3 mortar crew. These guys are devastating to some densely packed archer, and that is what you would expect when you are taking Vampire Coast against Bretonnia. Bretonnians are relying on their archer to shoot down your gun line, so you'd go for the mortars with their explosion damage to blast away the Bretonnian archer line. As for the monstrous presence here, a ton of animated hulks to reinforce the front line and a Lamprey's Revenge guarding the rear. For the leadership, we have Count Noctilus leading the army with a ton of zombie summons, Drown Dead, the Moon Dial for 2 more extra zombie summons, and Invocation of Nahak for healing. That's basically it for army builds. Now let's get the battle started. At the start of the battle, both armies would be going into a bit of artillery standoff. The few trebuchets will be firing at the Vampire Coast, while Vampire Coast will be returning fire with the mortars. Now, because of the chevron upgrades on all these few trebuchets, all the way up to level 7, 1 single gold chevron, they are fairly accurate, and if we fast forward into the artillery skirmish phase, we can see that the rocks will be hitting the zombie pirate gunnery mobs pretty reliably. You can see that they are already doing substantial damage to the more expensive black spot unit. So that means some of these vampire infantry should actually start pushing forward, because if they don't, they will just get smashed apart. Of course, the mortars are returning fire and demolishing all these peasant bows methodically, but the Bretonnian player, Sipa, definitely spotting these artillery being a threat to his peasant army. So the trebuchets will be counter-firing into the mortars. 3 whole trebuchets with their accuracy upgrade. They're absolutely hammering the poor artillery crew of the vampirates. And you can see that 1 mortar crew is already down to around 1/3 of their HP. The other 2 are still firing, but the peasant bows are still holding on for now, using up their last bit of leadership, mustering the last bit of their courage, trying to use up as much ammo as possible before they go. You can see the peasants have taken different levels of damage. One of them is already wavering, and with the zombie summon dropping in, they won't be holding for long. Still, the sheer volume of arrow fire did put a dent in the zombie gun line. Combined with the trebuchet fire, all these gunnery mobs suffered different levels of casualties. At the back there, because of the lack of scurvy dogs and fellbats, the few trebuchets are actually safely sitting behind the front line, bombarding the vampirates from a distance. Now, one of the mortar is on the verge of disintegration, while the peasants are trying to push for the gunnery backline of the vampirates. The peasant archers in the second line here, some of them are being pushed off by the zombie summons from Count Noctilus. One of them, the pistol summon, actually shooting the peasants as they run away from the battlefield. While over here, we have some Royal Hippogriff Knights screening out some of the zombie pirate summons, trying to pin them down and allow the peasant archers at the back to recover. While the peasant infantry line are not that reliable, a lot of them are just taking noticeable damage from the melee grind against zombies, while those that manage to get on top of the zombie pirate gunnery mobs, they are actually being pushed back by the Lamprey's Revenge or other animated hulks monster. As for the mobility, the Grail Knights and the Hippogriff Knights are actually sneaking around the battlefield, ignoring the defenses of the Vampire Infantry and going straight after the mortars and animated hulks at the back. One of the mortars are dead, while the other 2 units are holding on, bombarding Peasants, but they soon will be shut down by the Grail Cavalry once they're done with the animated hulks. However, unfortunately for the Peasants, their leadership is crumbling quite quickly. All these peasant mobs cannot hold under these scary little zombie mobs and will be pushed back. That means there is no safe firing position, not even for the few trebuchets that are so very far back. They are still firing and smashing apart the gunnery mobs, using their anti-infantry damage to do as much damage against the vampire as possible before they get wiped out by the advancing zombie pirate forces. The vampire coast still has quite a bit of their gun line on the field, with the pistol mobs and handgun mobs shooting at the poor Grail Reliquae. If they're left free to fire, they can still do some significant damage to the Grail Cavalry, so the few trebuchets really need to focus them down as soon as possible. So far they've made quite a bit of progress hammering down 2 handgun units. The black spot is almost dead as well. The problem is that they won't be firing for any longer as the zombie pirates are slowly approaching their positions. Also, Fay Enchantress in a bit of a pickle right now as Count Nautilus and a whole lot of vampire monsters are going after her. Lamprey's Revenge and Animated Hulks are all faster than her on foot. Well, she's not exactly on foot, but she's floating around the same speed as a Footlord anyway, so we'll count her as on foot. Once the Vampire Coast monsters catch up, they have enough mass and size to pin down the Footlord, preventing her from escaping. She is struggling to get out, but the regrowth earlier was barely keeping her in the fight, as her leadership dipped dangerously low. She also dumped down a chalice of potion, nuking some poor zombie mobs, trying to recover as much value as possible before she might get routed off by the pursuers. The sad thing is that there are no peasants nearby to save the Fay, and on the far side, the Grail Cavalry are too busy running down the zombie mobs. They're doing some good work for sure, but that also means that they're way out of position and cannot actually support the Fay Enchantress. Another few trebuchets will be shut down by the deckhand mobs, while one of them is still firing at the black spots. This regiment of renown is almost dead. A very nice targeting pick, while over here, the pistol mobs, these are permanent ones, they are not summoned. Somehow these guys are almost untouched in combat with all of their unit models intact. They might just be the chaff that the vampires need in the late game. Now, the Hippogriff Knights are returning to the middle of the battlefield, going after the pistol mobs. They should really be over here and beat down these Lamprey's Revenge, because the Fay Enchantress is dangerously low in health. She's taking so many shotguns from the surrounding Lamprey's Revenge. Her health is extremely low now, down to around 40% of her HP. Now the Hippogriff Knights are helping her out, but unfortunately this might just be too late as the Fay is indeed routed away. To make things worse, she's running in one direction while the Grail Knights are on the other side of the vampire blob, unable to save her from the pursuers. The Royal Hippogriff Knights are still fighting, but there are more and more zombies and animated hulks piling in, disrupting their advance, and the Fay Enchantress will be pursued to her death. The Lamprey's Revenge are taking damage, so they need some emergency healing from the invocation of Nahek, but here comes the charge of the Grail Knights. The Bretonnians slamming straight into their backs, doing massive impact damage with their armor-piercing anti-large attacks. The Royal Hippogriff Knights are also diving down. This forces the Lamprey's Revenge to turn and fight against the cavalry charge, and might just be the thing that saved the Fay Enchantress from her certain doom. As the crabs are too busy fighting the knights, the Fay Enchantress slips away from the engagement, and the poor Lamprey's Revenge being overwhelmed by an elite force of Bretonnian knights. They're taking substantial damage, down to less than half health despite the invocation of Nahek. The Grail Cavalry might have lost their healing, but they still have their elite melee stats and the blessing of the Lady. The Lamprey's Revenge being forced to fight some superior combatants. Their leadership is quickly dropping into crumbling and even disintegration territory. Minus 55 leadership, normal units would be shattered by now, and as you can see here, the Lamprey's Revenge are no more. Losing the Lamprey's Revenge is devastating for the vampires, as they now have to rely on animated hulks and Count Nautilus to win the day. The balance of power is against the Bretonnians right now, as they do not have their lord pumping up their balance of power, but still, the 2 Grail Cavalry would be a very significant force, able to pick off any scattered vampire units. You can see that the spearmen at arms are pursuing the retreating pirate deckhand mobs. That fulfills the attacking rule, allowing the Grail Cavalry to extract themselves from the fight. Also, the Grail Reliquary here, very important piece of single entity, providing that leadership and immune to psychology buff, so that these spearmen arms, despite their leadership is extremely low, they are still holding, unwavering in front of the enemy's overwhelming force of vampires. As time goes by, the summons of Count Noctilus are slowly fading away. Definitely good news for the Bretonnians, as the balance of power is slowly climbing back to the middle. On top of that, the Bretonnian mobility is cleaning up all the vampire stragglers. They are way too scattered and are basically out of the equation, crumbling to dust. Only a single pistol mob, Animator Hulks, and Count Noctilus are forming a blob. Unfortunately, this is essentially ceding the control of battle to the Bretonnians. Now, the Bretonnians are charging in, slamming into the Animated Hulks with their anti-large attacks. The Grail Knights are demolishing this one unit of monstrous infantry, while the Grail Royal Hippogriff Knights, they are harassing the zombie pirate gunnery mobs at the back, preventing them from providing any of the infantry support to the animated hulks, making sure the Grail Knights are maximizing damage against their targets. There are no more infantry support for the vampires, as Count Noctilus has ran out of his zombie summons, and that means it will be just Count Noctilus versus the Grail Knight. We shall go into fast forward here and see whether the Grail Cavalry can surround Count Noctilus and beat him down, and it seems that it is indeed the case here. Count Noctilus might be a quite decent foot lord and having healing and all that, but unfortunately against the super elite Bretonnian Knights with armor piercing and elite melee stats, his halberd is just not quite enough, allowing the Bretonnians to claw back with their victory. GG to both Sipa and Sigos. For the army performances here, it is quite funny to see the few trebuchets to become counter artillery fire when normally they can't do jack shit. For the rest of the carrying work though, it is all on the backs of the Grail Cavalry. The Royal Hippogriff Knights 2,795 gold and the Grail Knights 3,200 gold worth of damage value. All of them earning silver chevrons definitely wiped out most of the Vampire Coast army, including surrounding Count Noctilus and beating him down in the end. The Fay Enchantress unfortunately got routed off early, so she couldn't actually carry that much against the zombie pirate grind. For the Peasants though, the archer line got crumbled hard. For the peasant infantry, the bowmen got wrecked hard as the infantry start crumbling as soon as the vampire infantry makes contact. While the Grail Reliquary, well, they're only Grail Reliquary, so not much to say about them. For the Vampire Coast army, the handguns did very little damage as they have been shot up by a combination of peasant archer fire and few trebuchets and then run down by the Grail Cavalry. Lamprey's Revenge tried hard to carry, but unfortunately being isolated there and overwhelmed by Grail Cavalry with all the armor piercing. Even the best regiment of renown of the Vampire Coast cannot stand against the Chosens of the Lady. Now for the artillery here, because they got heavily targeted by a combination of artillery and the Grail Cavalry, they also got shut down hard. The animated hulks also did very limited damage as they are not the tankiest unit. They did have a bit of armor piercing, helping them to trade a little bit better against the Grail Cavalry, but unfortunately just no match for the Bretonnians' finest. As for the zombie pirate infantry, they actually managed to earn back most of their value. One of them even earned back quite a bit more. 111 kills probably earned from chasing off routed peasant infantry. Count Noctilus himself, not doing too much damage. Yes, he has armor piercing and anti-large, but unfortunately, the Grail Knights are just too much for him. That's it for today's battle. I hope you all enjoyed, and if you want to see more Total War Warhammer multiplayer content, be sure to subscribe to my channel. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Tactical Lich, signing out.